Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight for our special session, County Board of Supervisors. So first off, call to order. But before we do, just a reminder, if you're carrying a cell phone, computer, two-way radio, or other sound device, please silence it to minimize disruption in the meeting. Thank you. And now call to order. District 1.
Present, kind of.
District 2, Jeronimo Vasquez, Supervisor and current Chair.
Judy Begay, District Supervisor for 4, Vice Chair.
Matt
Supervisor
Ryan with
3.
popcorn in his mouth, saying hello to everybody.
We're all mixed up today because it's a Wednesday and not a Tuesday. So District 5.
We are attempting to get her online, so she's trying to call into the meeting.
I thought she was already on, sorry.
Save here. I need to see. Hello, this is Lena. I'm in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Supervisor Fowler. Okay, next, can I please have the Pledge of Allegiance? Please rise and face the flag. Thank you. We will now take public comments from those in the room first, and then public comments from those who have joined virtually. Clerk Daly will explain how the public can provide comment at this time.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. And just a reminder, this is for public comment for items that may not be on the agenda. If you have a public comment for the public hearing, we'll get to those for the public hearing item. If you have a public comment and you're here in the room, you can fill out a form over on the table by the door and bring that to me, and I will make sure that we call on you to provide a comment up at the podium. If you've joined virtually and you have a public comment, you can hit *9, and that will raise your hand and notify us that you would like to speak. And at this time, we do not have any hands raised or public comment forms.
Any public comments virtually?
No, there are no hands raised, Chair Vasquez.
Okay, in that case, we'll move forward. The only item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing to consider the creation of a domestic water improvement district, a DWID. We will have staff present first, then the applicant will present. I will then open the public hearing and ask for comments from the public. At that time, Clerk Daly will provide instructions on how to provide comments in person and virtually. First, we'll start with the staff's presentation and then the applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm Andy Bertelson, Deputy County Manager representing staff on this item, with thanks to Heather Mosier in our attorney's office, Lindsay Daly in our clerk's office, as well as Casey Dorman, Donna Kasner, and Sarah Benatar with our assessor, recorder, and treasurer's offices. So the board is being asked this evening to approve a resolution 2023-43 establishing the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District. And with that action, being asked to appoint Brandon Cupp, Dean Buchenauer, and Brandon Short as the interim board of directors, a 3-member board to serve until elections are held. Please note the attorney for the applicant, Steve Wien, is here and has amended the original petition. Originally, a 5-member board was being requested. That has been amended to a 3-member board. Just a bit of background on August 2nd, property owners, through their attorney, who's here, Steve Wien, filed a petition addressing the Board of Supervisors for the establishment of an improvement district to be known as the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 48-903. Per that statute, a hearing was required to be set within 40 days, which it has been done. We are here today. Hearing notices were sent out to those included in the district boundary over 20 days prior to the hearing, and the hearing notice was published twice in the local newspaper, 1 week apart. Statute authorizes the Board of Supervisors to grant the petitioner's request to establish the district boundaries, to designate land included therein, and to designate the district corporate name per Arizona Revised Statute 48-903. It is required that the petition is signed by a majority of persons owning real property by the owners of 51% or more of the real property within the limits of the proposed district boundary. Those signatures have been validated. Of the 35 properties located within the boundary legal description, 24 properties obtained approving signatures, equaling 69%. So with that, if the board has any questions, staff would note that all of the requirements for the establishment of the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District have been met per statute. And so with that, staff would recommend approval of the resolution this evening. The applicant is also here to give a presentation through their attorney, Steve Ween, as well as members of the approving district are here as well.
Thank you, Deputy County Manager Bertelson. We will now have the representative for the community, Attorney Steve Ween, present and answer questions related to the petition for the creation of the DWID.
And thank you, Chairman Vasquez, members of the Board of Supervisors. We appreciate all your time and effort. I want to say special thanks to Supervisor Person because you're very helpful in getting this process. So we do appreciate that. And I would also like to thank staff. I think they've done an excellent job processing this from the attorneys, making sure that everything's in compliance too, especially Lindsay, who has, walked everything procedurally through that needs to happen to ensure the statutes and the rules and everything are complied with. So to make no further ado, I just want to briefly tell you why it's important making these types of decisions and converting these water companies to districts. And it's very simple, especially with these small water providers. It's extremely difficult going through the Arizona Corporation Commission to function as a small water company. To put it in perspective, just to raise rates is going to cost you $20,000. That's if you need a $3 raise. So think about that when you're trying to spread that out to 25 customers. It's implausible. You can't do it. So at the end of the day, what these districts allow us is the communities to run their own system, take care of it, raise their own financing. And when they need to raise money for something big like a well, their interest rates going through the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority is 2%, 3% less than what you would get as a water company, as a private water company. And on top of that, just your cost to operate are usually about 20 to 30% lower. For example, there's tax exemptions if you want to buy pipes, transmission lines, no sales tax, things of that nature. It really adds up over time. So I urge the board to approve the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Ryan.
Sure. Chairman Vasquez, Supervisor Ryan, just to clarify the process and ensure what happens. So about a year and a half ago, we started the petition process and reached out to the community, mainly through the HOA board, to go and petition and explain to the community, here's the district, this is what we'd like to do, but it requires landowners and residents to sign a petition. So they went through a process to get not only all the petitions signed, but get the people to volunteer to become your board. We submitted that petition along with the maps and giving you a general idea of what we're doing. I believe the number of petitioners was about 65%, 65% of the landowners. I don't remember the exact number, but it's substantially above the 50% plus one. So we've met the statutory requirements. After the filing, it triggers requirements of the county to publish and to make sure everybody has received notice. So those notices have been sent out. So they've been published in the newspaper as well. And therefore, from a notice standpoint, we reached out to the community before the petition process, during the petition process. Once it was filed, the county reached out by both letter and by publication. So the public has had ample notice, and the great support for this, as you see, yeah, there's nobody who's opposing the district, which is fortunately for all of us. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to capture that for the record.
No, that's fine.
You know, acknowledging that there was an attempt to reach out to all property owners in the district as drawn. That is another requirement, showing the boundaries that we have before us. And so with that, you know, one of the other determinations is the public convenience and necessity associated with it on water. Do you want to speak to that just for a second?
Yes, thank you. Chairman Vasquez, Supervisor Ryan. That's an important point, and it segues from what I spoke about when I first began, which is it's important to give people clean water, potable water to drink and to have in their households. The biggest problem in this area sometimes isn't the physical water underneath the ground, which is where you usually pump it from, but it's the cost of lifting that water and providing services where you have certified operators who understand what they're doing, who can operate and maintain a system, you know, people who can run the books and make sure that they're financially able and viable to continue to provide potable water. You know, there are horror stories throughout the nation when you start looking at, you know, water quality issues, mainly because systems have broken down, you know, and not been maintained, not because the people on the ground don't know what they're doing, but because they're not financially viable. And the thing about these districts is they are much more financially viable than a water company of this size. It's just the nature of the beast, as I indicated. You know, trying to raise $20,000 just to raise your rates $5 makes absolutely no sense, and nobody wants to be in that situation. So the alternative is you just have this slingshot effect where you don't raise your rates for 20 years. I practiced in front of the Arizona Corporation Commission. It's nothing, you know, for me to go in and say these people haven't had a raise since the 90s. I have one right now that the last time they had a water rate increase was 1990. And now we got to catch up to 223. The rate shock is incredible. We don't like to do that. Districts can raise those rates slowly and maintain their system without having this bad slingshot where all of a sudden the system's distressed. They can't hire people and they need to go spend $100 a month to get everything fixed up by each customer. It's not viable. This is a much better system.
Okay.
So,
And then one last question, Mr. Chair. And the 3 board members that are being recommended, if we approve this, they meet all the qualifications to be board members.
yes, Chairman Vasquez, Supervisor Ryan, that's a really good question, because one of the things that as we went through the process, we first submitted 3 names to be on the board. Now, I will say that there was a typo. It was my fault. I didn't catch it. We said 5-member board, but then it corrected it to 3-member board in our revised petition. That was a typo as shown. Our original petition just had the 3 members. One of those proposed board members own the land in trust, and based upon the way the statutes read and the interpretation by county attorneys, they don't believe that that qualifies them for sitting on the board because you have to own it personally. So we went back and found another board member who owns the land personally who can sit on the board. So all of those requirements have been met. And that's fine. And one of the things that I want to note, just for the record, so everybody understands the way this process works, once we submit the petition and hopefully it's approved by this board, what then happens if somebody wants to object and say there was something wrong with the process or something happened that they disagreed with, they have, it's either 30 or 60 days, I forget, to come and bring those complaints up forward and say, hey, there was something wrong in this process. And, they would have to try to overturn it through a court system. I really doubt that's going to happen, but I just thought that this is something that should be known that, if there's corrective things, because sometimes boards of supervisors gets a little nervous when we make minor changes, like in the last one where we changed some of the district boundaries, which are allowed by statute. But if somebody didn't like it, they have a time frame which they could come and complain. So I doubt that's going to happen. I think this will go smooth. Those timeframes will pass, but I just wanted to let you know that at the end of the day, if somebody believes that there was something that was done wrong, they have an opportunity to correct it. And we'll see what happens, but I've never seen it happen.
And that's a recourse beyond if we make the decision to approve.
Right.
But just needed to capture that in record associated with the board members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Supervisor Horstman.
Yes, and thank you. And it's good to see you, Steve, and thanks for appearing before us here today. Just for the record, I know this is in District 1 and I've received no objections to this. And I understand that Lindsay, have you received any objections to this?
No, I have not, Supervisor Horstman.
And just for the record too, I'll also note that both the assessor and the recorder have reviewed the 3 names and found them to be registered and qualified. Is that correct?
Supervisor Horstman.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Horstman. Supervisor Begay.
Yes, thank you for being here, doing this presentation, and for the board members here too. Also, thank you for being here. Just have a question on the resolution under item number 6, as far as the three board members are their interim. You're talking about the resolution speaks to election until elections are held. When are these going to be? When is this going to be done?
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez, Supervisor Brigade. That is a really good question. So what we do is we will, at the first meeting, what has to happen is the 3-person board will divide themselves into a group of 2 and a group of 1. So we have staggered elections. There will be 2 people that have a term that will be up at the next general election. So that would be November 2024. Yeah, you guys know that better than I do, right? So, and then the 1 person will have essentially a 4-year term, and their election will come up at 2026, November of 2026. So they're staggered from here on out. The reason that you have 2 first is because it gives the voters an opportunity to say, hey, we know these are interim. This is just to get started. But, if they want to select somebody else to be on the board, they have their opportunity as quickly and conveniently as possible.
I have a follow-up question to that. How do you determine which of the board members are the 2-year and the 1? Like, how is that determined?
Chairman Vasquez, I usually make them play rock, scissors, paper. It really is just randomly select them on themselves who wants to do it.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or comments? Supervisor Fowler? Okay.
I don't, Mr. Chair, it sounds like the community really supports this. Sometimes the water district struggles because many of the homeowners are not, they don't really live there, and so they don't want to pay more. But it sounds like there's a lot of support for this particular water district right now. So that is a big plus right there. Just getting it started is a big challenge. So thank you so much. Sounds like you've done a lot. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Fowler. And thank you, Mr. Ween. We'll be now moving on to the public hearing.
And Chairman Vasquez Board, I thank you for your time and I appreciate you setting this on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, I am now opening the public hearing. When you are called to speak, announce your name and a place of residence. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure that your comments are directed to the topic. Clerk Daly, please explain how those here in person and those virtually can provide public comment.
You, Chair Vasquez. If anyone would like to provide a public comment during this public hearing, you can fill out a comment board at the table and bring that up to me, and then I will call your name. You don't have to fill out a comment form, but it's helpful to have for the record. And if you've joined virtually, you can hit *9 and that will raise your hand and notify us that you would like to speak. And at this time, if we do have someone that would like to speak, we'll set the clock for 3 minutes and it's green, and then you can see the countdown on the podium for those that are here in person. And then it will turn red when the time is up.
Do we have any public comment at this time?
At this time, we do not have any hands raised in the virtual format, and I do not have any comment forms for in-person comments.
Yeah, I'll give it a minute.
We are also checking the board comment email inbox, as that was publicized as part of the public hearing for people that wanted to provide comment that weren't attending the meeting. And we have not received any emails in that board comments inbox as well.
Okay, in that case, we will move forward. I am now closing the public hearing. Supervisors, are there any questions or comments before we continue?
There are no questions. I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion to approve resolution 2023-40-43, establish the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District and appointing Brandon Cup, Dean Bucknauer, and Brandon Short as the interim board of directors of a 3-member board to serve until elections are held.
Chair Vasquez, if I can just interrupt for 1 minute, we do need to point out a correction for the resolution. If Deputy County Mosher can identify the correction in the resolution for the record.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez and Lindsay. I apologize that I didn't catch this in my initial review, but when I was preparing for the hearing today, in the third whereas, the petition is signed by a majority of the persons owning real property. That should be "and." That is what the statute requires.
Mhm. Third whereas.
The third whereas, the petition is signed by a majority of the persons owning real property. That should say "and" the owners of 51%.
Thank you. Supervisor Horstman?
Yes, thank you. And just for the record, I would like to kind of state that in fact, we have followed the requirements 48903. Petition, in fact, this hearing was scheduled within 40 days of the petition. The hearing notice went out 20 days prior to the publication. Majority of the over 51%, in fact, I understand it's 69% of the landowners, in fact, have signed the registered and qualified voters to serve on this board. We've received no objections. We've also heard that this is the best way to proceed. It's the lowest cost of operation of a water system. So there is public benefit for proceeding with this. And then there is by statute, of course, they've set staggered terms. So with that, we have received the resolution. If you want, we can read it in, or we can just accept the resolution as presented with the third whereas saying owning real property and by the owners. Unless you'd like it read into the record, but if not, since
I think we already read it in the record,
Good.
so I think we're good.
then with that, I would at this point ask for us to approve Resolution 2023-43, establishing the A1 Ranch Domestic Water Improvement District and appointing Random Cup, Dean Booknauer, and Brandon Short as the interim board of directors of a 3-person board to serve until staggered elections are held.
Can I have a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. Please. Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Before we vote, are there any other comments? Okay, in that case, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, the vote is unanimous, 5-0. Congratulations, you now have a water improvement district.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe now we have county manager.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the issue I was going to update you on this evening has been resolved at this time, so we have nothing to report. So at this time, we turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Well, in that case, thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work, and my colleagues and all the community for coming out and making this happen. Good job, everyone. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.